And welcome to this episode of the Good Citizen Podcast. Great to have on today John and Faith Gelsthorpe from Lost History Tours. I want to jump in and share about this new app that they have, but also rediscovering some of the lost history just in time for the 250th anniversary. So John and Faith, and I'm going to let them kind of arm wrestle today as to who gets to talk about what. I sometimes try to ask, but here we go. If you would just jump in, share about just a recent success story or just the way that God's using your ministry.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And it's a pleasure to be with you today and share just a little bit about what God is doing through Lost History Tours. So just this past weekend, my oldest daughter and I were out in Plymouth, Massachusetts. It was we were doing our testing trip. In sneak peek, there's actually a new Plymouth tour that is coming in the app. We were out there and just seeing God move through different things. We met this really sweet couple. They've dedicated their lives to telling the true history there in Plymouth, and we had an opportunity to be able to meet them, and just in that brief conversation, just to see what God is doing already and what He's going to do, was just a powerful moment of just watching God answer prayer. Our prayers, in addition to, we didn't even realize or know, but these folks had been praying for different things and had been trying to do different things similar to what we're doing. And here, God prepared us in a way that we've already got the platform built. And so it was just a beautiful situation. We went over to the National Monument to the Forefathers and ran into a person over there. And it was interesting because she indicated to us that morning she had been praying that someone would help tell the story and continue the legacy of this couple there in Plymouth. And she was just overjoyed with what we're doing and now being able to, work with these folks to share more of Plymouth's history and share more of our American history and our providential history that is centered there in Plymouth. So just a really cool, that's just one very small.
Most recent.
Yeah, that's the most recent. That literally happened on Saturday. And it just to see how God is answering prayer, God is moving through other people and just how things are going. It's very exciting.
Well, so there was no previous connection. Like you just show up and God puts you guys. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was. There's an event coming up out there in August. And we had tried to get tickets to this event and through...
No, so this is amazing because God works even in the midst of our shortcomings. So we were invited to go to this event that's supposed to be out at the National Monument to the Forefathers at the beginning of August. So a friend told us about this and we were like, oh, okay, we got to go. Well, that was 3 months before the event. So I'm thinking, okay, we have time to book the tickets. Well, then a week before he was planning to go and do all of the testing around Plymouth, I'm sitting down at the computer and I'm like, okay, it's time to sign in and I need to get this done this week. And all of the tickets to the event were sold out.
Oh no.
And I'm like, oh Lord, no. I'm supposed to be at this. Like we were planning all of these things and there was specific people that we were planning on meeting there, different historians that we wanted to connect with. And we had other friends who were telling us, yeah, you really want to be at this event. And I'm thinking, Lord, how did I do this? And so I'm thinking, I'm such a fool. I can't believe this happened. And so then I just start scouring websites. And I'm like looking for different contexts, but a lot of these websites don't have like info at thisplace.com. A lot of them have these jot forms. So I'm putting in Faith Gelsthorpe, experienceliberty.com, and
Lost History.
That's our church.
Lost History.
Lost History. And so I'm trying to, and I'm filling out all these forms, and I'm looking for any contacts anywhere, and I'm just sending all these different emails saying, hi, I know I saw that you were already sold out at this event, but is there any way possible we could maybe be put on the wait list? We were really wanting to attend this event. We're a homeschool family. We love history. And is there any way possible we could be put on a wait list? And God works in spite of us. And it was amazing because one lady was like, oh yeah, we can get you on, no problem. And then different connections with people he just happened to run into. They're like, Lost History Tours. Oh, we just got an email from you.
the lady we ran into at the monument was actually the lady that Faith had been conversing with via
wow.
email that's helping to set up this event.
She
And so it
walks up,
was
she said,
like, wait a second. And it was just is one of those like God moments of like,
Oh, that's
wow,
awesome.
like that was just so cool watching how he orchestrated all of those events of us being out there for testing.
it's just so gracious. He works through us in spite of us.
Yeah.
He knows
so
our
good.
shortcomings and he still decides to use us. He's
So
amazing.
that's one of the most recent that just happened on Saturday, but we've seen stories like that throughout this whole process.
It's amazing. And so the episode last week be a sermon on Esther 5. And so we've been going through the book of Esther, no happenstance, no coincidences. God is working.
Yeah.
And so what an incredible, just God's favor on your
Yeah.
ministry. And so I had an opportunity to meet you recently when I was preaching out in Las Vegas. And anyone I tell that to is like, look, I was preaching at a church, Scouts Honor. All right. Like I
To his
promise
listeners,
that's what I was doing.
guys, he actually was there. It was a
Yes.
great message. It was phenomenal. We can vouch for him.
Yes.
So he actually did the job in Vegas.
Right. And just encouraged by the trip there. I talked about some on the podcast previously, just all that the church is doing, seeing real tangible results and change in the community, and just so many different ministries that have grown out of that, and even your family, Dave Tice and Matt Tice, and then Faith is a Tice before Gelsthorpe, I understand.
That's right. Yep.
But being there in Vegas, they're just different jokes. Right? So I was out at the Hoover Dam, and then I saw Lake Mead, and I understand a little bit of the history. I did not know that there is an actual museum to the mob in
There is.
Las Vegas. All right,
Yes.
so
True.
talking about rediscovering, and then one of your family members was telling me they're paddleboarding on Lake Mead.
Yes.
And folks, you have to understand, Lake Mead used to be the place where the mob dropped people with concrete boots on. All right.
Yes. Yes.
And they actually discovered a body on Lake Mead. All right.
They did.
So I was
That's
like,
a true story. Now, the one that they discovered was a very recent one. It didn't date back to the mafia days, but yeah, still a true story.
It's crazy. Vegas is definitely a mission field.
yes. So I'm like, I go to places and I'm like, maybe there's a stereotype here that's unfair. And then I show up and all this stuff comes out. And so like, no, I guess it is kind of fair. But
Yeah.
no, it was just such an encouragement. And then I think, again, providentially, just an opportunity to meet with you. And so Lost History Tours, it's going to be app-based, just going to jump again, big idea for the discussion today. It's an app-based program that helps you do self-guided tours through some of these amazing places in American history. I'm always fascinated by kind of how it got started. We have a lot of listeners out there, homeschool families, or just families, that go to other schools, but just love to do road trips together, love history, know that our history often isn't told fully, and want to rediscover some of this. And so one of the big ideas today is just to share this tool, but also want to capture some of that lost history as well. But yeah, first question really is kind of how that started. What sparked spending all this time, flying across the country to go to Plymouth and Philadelphia? So what sparked the idea?
Well, Faith can start that one.
Well, okay. So, during the whole Marxist movement, when they're tearing down statues and a lot of things, our monuments around the United States are being defaced, you're seeing it on the news. And this is after COVID,
This is 2022.
Yeah, around 2022. And John loves history. Our family loves history. He's a true patriot. And he was like, we really need to show our kids the country before and let them see these different monuments before they're all torn down. And during that time is very depressing feeling in our nation where it's America's bad, everything's bad, and we're just going to erase it all and start over fresh. I mean, that's the basis of the Marxist movement. And so we packed up our 4 kids in the back of the car and we drove from Las Vegas out to Washington, D.C. And we stopped at all these different neat places and let our kids experience the United States and see the Purple Mountain majesties and the fruited plains and the deserts and the trees and everything different. Then we get to Washington, D.C. and we go up to the huge Washington Monument and there's still paint residue. They tried to clean it off. There were so many things that were defaced and messed up, and it was just sad. But we enjoyed walking from place to place, showing our kids the history and why we're thankful to be Americans. And then we're driving back. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and this is a time frame where, again, people were tearing these monuments down, defacing these monuments without even knowing the full story.
Yeah.
Right? And not every monument is of a good person. Not every monument is someone we want to hold in high esteem or high regard, but we definitely need to learn from those good, the bad, and the ugly stories of history and tell the truth about it, and make sure people understand the full context of history and the context of what was going on at that time. So that's where it was just troubling, because it's like, look, they don't even know what they're doing. They don't even know who this person is. They were tearing down, monuments of abolitionists, and it's like, well, these folks fought against slavery.
Oh, Frederick Douglass. It's like, why are we
a good person?
down?
And and there's a good story there. So why are we tearing that monument down? Others could be debated of, well, yeah, their background, this person did these bad things. Okay, good. Let's talk about history. Let's talk about it. Let's learn from it and understand that, yeah, America's not perfect, but America is good. And we have a lot of good things. We need to learn from the bad of our history, and we need to celebrate the good and celebrate the great things that God has done. You look at any other nation on this planet, and you see God has blessed this country. We have founding, that was based on biblical principles, and there's no way around that when you look at the documents, you look at everything else. And so that was kind of our the spark point, if you will.
Well, we were driving back.
Yeah.
And he teaches a small group, a connections class, Sunday school at our church. And we were actually going through getting ready while we were on vacation, getting ready for our next connections class. And we were going to do biblical citizenship by wall builders. And so that's got David Barton, and Tim Barton, Patriot Academy with Rick Green. Yeah. And so we were listening to that. And we're driving down the road. The kids are in the back seat playing games and listening to Adventures in Odyssey. And he's like, what if we had all this information at our fingertips when we were at the monuments? Like, there has to be something like that. So he's like, babe, pull up your phone, look in the App Store. And so we just start looking. And in 2022, there were not tons of self-guided tour apps. Yeah. And so we're like, this is a need. And so we started just talking about the idea, and then the Lord just brought the Bartons to our church. He had a speaking engagement, and that was completely God. Yeah. And so John just pitched the idea to him, said, hey, what do you think about this? And he said, you provide the platform, content's easy, we're there for you. And they have been so gracious, so kind, so supportive through this entire process. So
Absolutely.
It's completely the Lord.
And just the way God has worked through bringing those providential, moments of meeting different people along the way. We've been very blessed, very humbled to be able to work with some of the folks we're working with right now and team with them on helping to further, telling the stories, further their missions, as well as telling the stories, making it interesting for, homeschool families like us, or just any person that just is curious about history or just wants to know more. We've tried to build that into the platform and make these stories, come alive. So,
I love this, and a great story of kind of kingdom entrepreneurship and just doing something together as a family. I just love that. I did have to share kind of one story because one example of this is Kentucky. And so in Kentucky, and those who have listened to the podcast for a while, I've talked about this before. But you have the birthplace of Abraham Lincoln and kind of the first monument to him. But then they pulled the Jefferson Davis monument out of the Kentucky state capitol. And this is one of those, he's president of the Confederacy. And so, But then I'm driving in between Bowling Green and Paducah, Kentucky one day, and I look to the left, and there's this massive obelisk that looks like the Washington Monument. And I look at my law partner at the time, like, what is that? And it is the monument to Jefferson Davis. It's like over 300 feet tall. And it's like, well, you pulled the statue out of the State House, but like, what do you do with this thing, And,
right.
And so, these monuments reflect our history with, Abraham Lincoln, with Jefferson Davis, and you can learn from that. And we want to just do away with it. So that was one. I consider myself a student of history. I just had never heard of it before. Yeah. Well, let's jump into, as you've studied American history, what are a couple just highlights for you? Whether that's a person or a place, and I'll let you guys go back and forth on maybe a couple of highlights. Again, kind of our lost history. We're trying to rediscover some things that people might not know about.
All right, so you just mentioned Lincoln, so I was going to save that one till a little bit later, but let me just go with that one because that's a really good one and, very appropriate to your last comment there. So one of the things that was so interesting that I learned in this as we've been going through this process was we were at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. We're recording with Tim Barton because he's got a couple of different segments on the Washington, D.C. tour. And one of the things that he pointed out, which is a fun fact, I had no idea that Lincoln was actually a champion fighter early in his life. So that was like, wow, this statesman that we think of is this very iconic person. Like he was a fighter, which is also kind of funny with all the UFC stuff in DC this week and all that, But we'll put that to the side for now. But,
Okay.
but
Building on Lincoln's legacy on the White House lawn. Okay, that was a missed opportunity for the Trump team, I think. But
exactly.
Okay.
But no, that was an interesting little fact I had no idea about. But even more than that, learning about Lincoln and his journey in his own Christian walk. He grew up a very moral, very Christian-oriented individual, but it's not until, and we see this, and we point this out in the tour, it's not until after Gettysburg that he really rededicates his life to where it's no longer just a cultural Christianity or a good person mentality. It's a faith and trust in Christ, which is a whole different level. And then, of course, soon after, he's assassinated. But just an incredible. That's one little story. Another one I would say is up in Boston. We're up in Boston testing this weekend as well, and seeing the USS Constitution. USS Constitution being a ship that one of the ships that George Washington ordered. And it's still there. That's still the original.
It's not a replica.
It's not a replica.
It's
so
a real one.
Mayflower 2 is a replica, but the USS Constitution there in Boston, that's the original. That's one of the ships that George Washington ordered for our Navy.
And they let you get on it, and you can
it.
Tour the whole thing. You can go on all the different levels. It's cool.
It's incredible. But that ship's history, going from that to also fighting the African slave trade later on, that's just incredible history that was really cool for me to learn as we were putting a lot of this together. Let's see. Do you have any stories or any nuggets?
Well, when we were filming, not filming, recording because it's audio. When we were recording down in Plymouth, they say a lot of the most underwhelming things when you go to Plymouth is it actually has bad Yelp reviews, which is so funny. Is the actual Plymouth Rock, and people are expecting this massive, stone and this big old thing, and then they get there and it's a rock, and it is when you go there and you don't know the history of it, it's a rock. I've heard about this rock my entire life. What's the big deal? So
this weekend when I was there with my oldest daughter doing our testing trip, we watched a couple families come by, and they did. It was okay, it's a rock, and it was funny because one of the dads that came through, he's all history spun up, ready to go. He's yeah, this is awesome. And then the mom is just kind of trailing behind, and the daughters are okay,
giving
mom,
the snacks to the kids.
Well, they were teenage daughters, and so the daughters were actually helping the mom to okay, don't make fun of dad. He really wanted to do this entire trip. Don't take this away from him. But it's funny though, because you do get different perspectives. So, sorry, I cut you off, but go ahead.
Actually, so when we went there with Mr. Stephen McDowell of the Providence Foundation, and he starts talking about the history specifically of the rock and why they cared about the rock, and then you see how it's etched 1620, and then you see this crack in it and what that crack represented and how they moved the rock from here to here, and the crack represents this divide that they made from
don't tell it. You got to get the tour.
And then they try to glue it back together, so many things where it's oh, when you actually hear the first-hand accounts of the people who are talking about this is why this rock is important, then it's oh, wow, this is neat to see that actual rock. Anyway.
It's something like quintessentially American about leaving a bad Yelp review for Plymouth Rock. It's like eye roll, and I love that the teenage daughter's just like, "Don't burst his bubble." He wants to see it. So wow.
Yeah.
That's
One
amazing
other
as
thing
well.
in Philadelphia that was really interesting is at Philadelphia's Christ Church, which is a very historic church. In the courtyard there, you can actually, I mean, we always kind of talk about it like there's history all around, but there you can actually touch history, which is really cool. There's 3 trees that are planted in that courtyard that were from the Lewis and Clark expedition, and they were brought back and given to...
As little seeds.
Yep, as seeds, given to Dr. Benjamin Rush, and Dr. Benjamin Rush actually planted those
Now,
in
who's
the
Dr.
courtyard.
Benjamin?
Well, Dr. Benjamin Rush is one of the most underappreciated, underrated founding fathers, and we could talk more about. We could spend an entire podcast talking about him, but the point is this: he was one of the founding fathers that Adams said was one of the 3 most influential. Washington, Franklin, and Rush were the 3 most influential, according to Adams. And so, anyway, so he's really interesting signer, but he planted those there in the churchyard at Christ Church. So they're huge trees now, and you can actually touch them. You can
When you exit around the back, yeah, you
can
see
it.
these
So
big old
it's
trees
like
that he
we
planted.
point that out in the tour. But it's little things like that some of them have high consequence of fighting the slave trade with the USS Constitution and the historical heritage of that, all the way to it's a tree or a rock, but it's a part of our history, and it's got there's stories there that we can tell.
Well, that segues into kind of the next question on who are some of the founders, and maybe you can dive into Rush a little bit more as to why he was important, but maybe 2 or 3 founding fathers. Yeah, they get underrated. They weren't maybe as good at their version of social media and promoting their part of the revolution. But yeah, just again, kind of this concept of lost history. Like who should we be pointing out, even like to our kids? Hey, why don't you do a book report on this, or have you studied this story? Yeah, so I'd be interested in just a few of those figures.
Yeah, that's a great question, and one I would say is Robert Morris. Robert Morris, who's known as the financier of the Revolution. A lot of folks don't really know a lot about him. He's got a couple of monuments up there in the Philadelphia area because he was a very important signer, and again a financier. He signed both Declaration and the Constitution. So, but incredible guy. Fact check that. That was right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robert Morris Reed.
I had a moment there. I'm like, okay, wait a second. Yeah, he was one of the 6.
Okay.
But really interesting story there, because again, a lot of the stuff that we hear today about fighting the billionaires of the day, and a congresswoman recently had some comments on that, and it's like, look, if we knew our history, if we understood that many of these folks who had wealth, they sacrificed that.
They were pledging their
cause.
fortune, their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor.
So the battle was not against the billionaires of the day. It was against the tyranny of the king, and they wanted religious liberty. So Robert Morris is one great founder, great signer. Another one I would say is, let's see here, man, so many. I would say John Witherspoon. John Witherspoon, who was a pastor. One of the elements there, a lot of folks, have an idea of our signers as being, folks that, well, they might have believed in a God. Oh no, Witherspoon was a pastor. He was a Scottish pastor that was recruited to come across the Atlantic, to come to this country to lead what comes to be known as Princeton University. Because back then, all of the leaders of Princeton had to be a pastor, had to be a reverend, a minister, and so this gentleman was recruited to come over and lead Princeton and teach these new ministers, teach these young men to evangelize, to how to share the gospel, and not only in doing that does he teach a lot of ministers, but he also influences the most. He's he's recorded as influencing more founding fathers and signers than any other single person. And this is a pastor. And many people don't know his story. They don't know much about him. But here's a pastor who was a signer of the Declaration and had a huge impact. So that's another one. And I'd end on this one, Rush, because Dr. Benjamin Rush was one who, again, a lot of people don't know much of his story, but he's actually responsible for recruiting John Witherspoon. So he was one of the two people that went over to convince him to come over and be part of what was going on there in teaching these ministers, leading the work that was going on there at what comes to be Princeton University. But he also is a very compassionate person. He's known for a lot of the medical and health breakthroughs of the day back then. He was, again, a very influential person behind the scenes. And he did run into a little bit of controversy with George Washington, but that's a whole nother story. But one of the takeaways, and I'll just leave with this one, because again, Rush, I could go on and on. Very interesting person to study. But the haircuts that our military have today, the GI cut, high and tight. Do we know where that came from? It actually came from Dr. Benjamin Rush and his advocacy of the military members keeping their hair and their wigs and their hair off of their neck. What was happening was so many of the soldiers were getting sick. We were losing more from sickness than we were from battle. And he said, guys, you need to keep your hair off of your neck while it's wet and cold. And we actually were able to see better numbers of our soldiers, losing less soldiers because of sickness, thanks to Dr. Benjamin Rush, and that carried on in the tradition and legacy of our military members typically having a very high and tight haircut. To even though it's not as needed today, it was definitely necessary back then, and just looks sharp. So there you go.
Well, and it just strengthens this thought of what an incredible group of individuals that came together to found the United States. And it also blows my mind to some degree of just how young so many of them were. And to have the knowledge that they did of history and of government, and to pull all that together. As you said, imperfect, but certainly impressive. What a remarkable republic that we have. Yeah. Well, I wanted to turn to Faith now on just a question of, as you've studied this, is there a particular a woman that stands out as a leader, or even just a couple of individuals that maybe you've studied, and so the listeners out there would be inspired by that? Anyone that has kind of stood out to you in your studies?
There are so many. It's amazing. When you go to Plymouth, you start with seeing the monument to the Pilgrim Mother. And this whole monument talks about how without the mother doing what she's supposed to do, nations can't survive. And so starting with the whole founding with, the pilgrims that first got here, that's amazing. Skip forward to the Revolution. We're talking about people that were young, how significantly young they were. There's a young girl who did her own midnight ride named Sybil Ludington. And we all know about Paul Revere, but this little girl was riding horseback, getting all of the men awake through all the counties, telling them, okay, we got to go, we got to fight. I mean, amazing women, old and young, that were used. But my favorite one to study has been Abigail Adams. She was the wife of John Adams. She was the mother of John Quincy Adams. And when you study her life, when you read her letters back and forth, what I appreciate about them is, what's funny, a lot of letters we don't have of all of our founding fathers because they would burn them. Afterwards, it's like, okay, delete that email, that type of thing.
The king might find this and hang me for it. Yeah,
exactly. And what's cute is you even see in a lot of Abigail's letters, she's like, please make sure to burn these. And he's like, nope, I'm not doing it. It's just so precious. And I believe his name's David McCulloch, who has he's a great historian who has a lot of letters written in his books. He's got a book called 1776. That's a neat one. He has a book called Rush. And that has...
No, that's a different one. That's Stephen Freed.
Stephen Freed, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I've listened to that one. But
he has the John Adams book, which has a lot of the
correspondence back and forth.
Yeah.
He gives me books to read, and I read them, and I'm like, this is really good. So, but Abigail, She was amazing because as her husband is gone and she's having to literally defend the home front, she's having to run the business, she's having to raise the children, she's having to do all of the things while still being a supportive wife. And you see the letters back and forth, which is really funny. There's one specifically where she writes him this huge long letter telling him how she loves him and all of the hard things that are going on with, you have British soldiers coming in and all of these things, and he sends back, hey, I'm alive, I'm okay, things are going good. Basically, like the wife texting, yes, it's like the thumbs up emoji to the wife saying, you wouldn't believe.
I'm not at all guilty of that.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe how long my day was, and the kids were doing this, and then I had this with work and all of this stuff, and he's like,
Good
got
job.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so she replies back, and she says, I'm not satisfied with the length of your letters. Like, hello, you need to fix this. And they just have a real relationship, but that relationship is completely centered on God. And you see the importance of women backing their husbands, but then not just, okay, I'm stepping in line and doing whatever you want me to do. I also have my own personal relationship with Jesus, because I can't do what I'm supposed to do as a wife, as a mother, as a Christian, as a patriot, as a person in this world, if I am not daily spending time talking to Jesus and asking the Holy Spirit to fill me and to control me and to do that day what he wants me to do. So Abigail, definitely an amazing lady in history to study.
And along the way, our friends down at Wall Builders actually have an incredible collection.
Oh, it
and
moved
so along the
me
way,
to tears.
she actually got to hold one of Abigail's letters.
Oh, wow.
We went down and we
One of the
saw their
originals.
museum, and anybody can go and see that. You just go to wallbuilders.com and you can schedule a time to actually go in and visit the Wall Builders Museum, but they have an amazing archive.
Incredible.
And you go in. So, I mean, like, I like going to archives at Washington, D.C., but archives got nothing on Wall Builders because
Okay.
they aren't facsimiles that you're seeing. You're seeing and holding the original documents. And so I had heard about Abigail, read all of her stuff, and I'm talking to Tim Barton about this. And he says, hey, come here, I want you to see something. And he goes in the back room and he pulls out this thing. And, you know, before you go in, they make you wash hands and all of this stuff. And he comes out and he's like, you want to see this? And he's like, read this. And I start reading it and I'm holding this. And I'm like, and I started shaking. I'm like, this is a letter that Abigail wrote to John. I mean, just so cool to see and touch and feel history with your own hands.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for Wall Builders. Just a neat ministry they have there.
Well, that's amazing. In a project I'm working on, was looking at the Don't Forget the Ladies or Remember the Ladies, the famous letter saying, hey, you know, all men are created equal. Like, let's expand that. And as we talked even out in Vegas about the story of the United States is this beautiful biblical principle that has been expanded on in a fallen world with fallen people. And just that, I mean, that letter is incredible. You can see the relationship back and forth. And in one hand, she's like, hey, the house, and I forget if it was in Boston, but you know, there's smallpox there and somebody's got the key, but the British raided it. And I hope it's still standing. And like the sacrifices that they make as a family. But then even in that letter, she reflects what I would consider kind of an Ephesians 5, like relationship with her husband, saying, hey, you know, this is a biblical principle. And here's why it would benefit you. Like, so she's like employing all the powers of persuasion. And I think that was also one he kind of like, okay, you know, didn't maybe do something with it. But just an incredible exchange dealing with the hardship and the sacrifice of the revolution. So thank you for mentioning that. And I'd be interested, perhaps in the show notes, if you have some links to the story of Sybil. I had not heard of the statue to the Pilgrim Mother either, so we'll have to get that into the show notes as well.
What's incredible is 3 of those ladies that came across were actually pregnant.
Yes.
On like when they started the voyage, like incredible. Like these folks, these ladies that were part
strong
of that,
women.
They were strong women.
Wow.
There is no doubt about it. Good stuff.
Well, I love it. You're sharing this story. I think could relate to all of our listeners and this history that, again, it's been lost. Kind of sharing that full aspect of American history from different perspectives. I was encouraged to be there at the Museum of the Bible too, kind of telling that story. I had shared about the second inaugural address, and there's the actual version of it there. And so I didn't get to hold it, so I don't have it up on Faith. Like, oh man! But at least I got to see it. So
Yeah.
Well, so again, so many different stories we could go through. I wanted to turn now to a little bit of the app, and even just how did you put that together? So we were kind of shifting from American history to, preserving American history, kingdom entrepreneurship. So you kind of had this idea, but how did you then take it from idea to an app that people can actually do self-guided tours with?
And that's a great question. So
He surrounds himself with smart people.
that is true.
Including the person sitting to his right?
That's right. You nailed it right there. That is 100% right. We talk about all these, founding fathers being able to, can't do the work without their lady. Well, that is absolutely the case. Faith's been amazing, and just a trooper throughout this entire process.
Anyway, the app.
Okay, all right, the app. Okay, here we go. That was the crazy part about this, because we knew nothing about app development. That is not our normal day-to-day, interest, or what we typically, our knowledge base. So what we did was we started reaching out to different folks, getting some counsel from different people of, hey, what do you know about this? I met with the head of the deacon board down at my brother-in-law, Josh Tice, his church. He's the head of his deacon board, is an incredible businessman, and had a little background with app development and stuff. So got some advice from him. And then we just started, praying about it, and started, looking for different things and letting God lead. And we were able to come up with a group that helped us build it out. And then we're just, going through the process was definitely a challenge, definitely a lot of difficulties, struggles. It's not the easiest thing to get an app published in the Apple App Store. Google Play, that was pretty easy. But
totally different platforms. It's funny.
But yeah, no, it took a while to navigate that whole process of understanding what we needed to do, how to get that done, and working through the process. So, then it was a couple of different trips, sketching everything out, trying to curate how we were going to set up the tours. And then along the way, God just put us in the pathway of several different historians, and they have had that same heart of, it's funny, one of them said, when we first met him, he said, I had that idea 25 years ago. He said, I wanted to do something like this, but I started writing books, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And so it was just really kind of funny, because now we're able to take some of what these incredible historians have done in their books and producing this amazing content, these resources, and we're now making that available through this method of being able to walk around the monuments. And as your phone knows where you're at, the audio clips will play at the right places to give you the history and give you some interesting stories along the way. So the app development side has been a very interesting
learning process,
learning adventure throughout. But thankfully, we're in a pretty good place right now where we've got 3 brand new tours coming: Plymouth, Boston, and Philadelphia. Those are again in development right now.
There's also free guides in those locations and in DC. So the app, when you download it, is actually free. And then we have free guides in all of those locations. But if you want,
there's 3 of them. There's one right now. So DC is where we are live. So you have a free DC guide. Then you have a few different tours there. But we'll have Boston and Philadelphia with free guides coming, Lord willing, in the next couple of weeks before 4th of July, as well as the 3 brand new tours: Plymouth, Philadelphia, and Boston.
Oh. So again, one of the points of the story I wanted to highlight is, family, you have this great idea coming back. You got a lot of time on the road, I suppose, coming back from DC to Vegas, have this great epiphany, and you didn't even know how to make it work and just jumped in. And so I love that. That's one of the points of this podcast when I started is, who's doing the hard work of Christian citizenship and just jumping in. And of course, we have national ministries, but we also have your family that's just jumping in. Everybody's doing their part. So it's just so encouraging. So maybe speak directly to that experience, right? So somebody's going to DC at some point, America's 250th. Download the app. If you could kind of just walk through, and we can certainly put links in the show notes, but just walk through, like, how do they use it? How does it help their family?
Yeah. So it's quite easy. So you just go to the Apple App Store, Google Play Store, depending on which device you've got. Download the app. Apps, as Faith said, it was free. Free download for the app itself. You'll set up your account. It's tied to your phone, and then from there you just browse which tour you want to go to, which one you want to see or hear, you just pay for the tour that you want. We try to make them very economical. There's a lot of content. So in the different ones we have that are coming up, you're talking about anywhere from 80 to 100 minutes of content as you're walking around the monuments. So there's a lot to it. And
there's music and sound effects. Like, it's a fun experience.
But once you downloaded that tour, once you've purchased that tour, it's on your phone. And as long as our servers are up and hosting all of this, you can actually access it before you go. You can access it while you're there. That's really where it was designed for, is when you're at those locations. But for like the free guides, those are really great to listen ahead of time. So on the map feature, you can just kind of go around and listen to the different clips that we have, and it gives some information for each of those places. So, some helpful hints as you're planning your trip. That's the free guide. And then while you're there, the actual tours itself. But when you go home, you're like, man, I listened to so many good things, and there was so much going on. I can't remember what we listened to. Well, the great part about it is, the way we've designed it is, once you've paid for that tour once, your phone will still be able to reach back and get it after the fact. So you can go re-listen to it and just play it manually throughout, to remind yourself of that great history that you got to see while you were there on site.
Love it. And you might imagine that you might pay for some sort of tour in a place where you're not probably going to get the lost history, this strong history, looking at the founders, looking at their biblical knowledge and the direction of their lives. So yeah, just love the tool. And I know with some geofencing, it also can kind of, as you're there at the monument, it'll kind of pull that up.
Yeah.
So especially with summer road trips, I just wanted to emphasize that. Folks can certainly check it out on their own. But what a great tool. If you're heading to DC, I wanted to get this in front of folks. Well, we are looking at America's 250th. And so how, as you're thinking about all the work that you've done, you're thinking about America 250. What is, how do you see this kind of fitting into America 250? But then also, kind of, what is your hope, kind of your vision for the country, and what do you hope to inspire? Certainly, people listening to the history of what happened in our country. But what are you hoping they take away and then go do?
Yeah, great question. So for 250 specifically, I mean, the timing of all of this is, again, you just look at it and it's all God. In 2022, we weren't even thinking the 250 is coming, right? And that wasn't even on our radar. From that perspective, I think I love the fact that it's on so many people's radar right now, and everybody's like spun up, and it's celebrate America and how wonderful it is right now with that just mind, that thought process. So the way we fit into America 250 is we've pushed really hard to have these tours available in those 4 major locations: Washington, D.C., Plymouth, Philadelphia, and Boston, so that people, as they are traveling and going and seeing these sites, they don't have to rely on a tour guide that they don't know where that person's coming from, where they got their facts. We're using incredible historians. Too. Yeah, and your schedule, right? You can do this on your schedule, your time. And so I think it fits beautifully into the America 250 and Freedom 250 stuff that's going on, because you can do this on your schedule. It's very economical, and it's sourced in really good history. So the timing couldn't be any better. What we want people to take away from this is that God is working now. God is working and has worked in our country. There's so much that we can see His hand and His fingerprints on throughout our history if we just look, if we just know our history. So we want people to walk away with a renewed interest in the stories that helped build our nation. And because if you look close enough, you're going to see God's hand. You're going to see his moving throughout our history, through our documents, through our founders, through even the fallen, people that we are. God does great things and has done great things in our history.
Yeah. It makes me reflect on several biblical accounts of creating what we might call a monument, or at that time, maybe it's a pile of stones, but it's a reminder, hey, God helped you pass through the Jordan River or brought you through Egypt. And because he did that then, he is with you now, and he's going to help you now in your time. So that's what I love about this. So enjoyed the conversation today, and just encouraged by how you've just been faithful to God's leading, and just put your head down and said, we're doing this as a family. I just love it. But any closing encouragement, listeners, as they're thinking about America 250 impacting their own zip code, their own sphere of influence?
Well, one thing that I was thinking about was one verse that we had talked about a lot was Luke 19:10, and it has lost in there. It says, the Son of Man is come to seek and to save that which was lost. And it has been our hope and our prayer since the beginning of this that people would, as they're hearing the fun, exciting stories that they didn't know, that they would start looking into these stories and then see the God behind these stories, and then maybe through that get to know the God of the Bible that was there at the founding of our nation and founding of our country. So my big encouragement to moms and to girls and to really anybody is that as you're learning, as you're using these tools to teach your kids true history or to teach yourself true history, that through that you don't forget the God who made this nation possible. And as you get to know our founding fathers and you get to know our founding mothers and you learn about their relationship, they weren't these amazing, were they amazing? Yeah, they were. They're good people, just like the disciples were good people, but they were all just people. They're ordinary people just like you and I. And if God worked through them, he can work through you today. And it's just surrendering to his will and saying, okay, God, what do you want me to do today? It might not be founding a nation, but it very well could be raising up the next generation to continue on the legacy of faith that God has instilled in your life and in your family.
That's so good. Thank you.
Yeah.
John, anything else?
I just, look, it's kind of going off of that. God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And, we see that throughout our history, and we want people to know those stories. So we're humbled to do our part in helping to make this available for families across the country and individuals across the country so that they can know more about our history. They can get lost in history and find out more of what God's been doing in our country.
That's great. Well, John and Faith, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Thank you for, again, creating this great tool. We'll have that in the show notes, and looking forward to continuing the conversation with you.
That's good. Thanks for having us.